Welcome aboard the Spirits Operator podcast. I'm your host, psychic medium Mary B. Join me as we navigate the ethereal currents between the mystical and the mundane. Get ready to explore the unseen forces shaping our world and discover how to harness their power for personal growth, healing, and transformation. Hello, thank you for joining us in this second series titled Earth to Essence. This series is focused on the empath and the energy surrounding us. Today we have Melissa Box on the podcast. Melissa is a gifted psychic, empath, nurse, and witch who blends her intuitive abilities with her medical expertise to offer a unique approach to healing and guidance. With a deep connection to the spiritual realm and a compassionate heart, Melissa empowers individuals to discover their own inner strength and navigate life's challenges with clarity and confidence. She openly shares how she handles the challenges of being an empath, offering valuable insights and practical tips. Hello, let's welcome Melissa to our podcast today.
Hello. Hey, Mary.
So Melissa and I have known each other for quite some time. I think it's been about 5 years now. Isn't that right?
I think so. Yeah.
Do you want to tell our listeners how we met?
We met in a cool little metaphysical shop in Fort Walton Beach, Florida, owned by a friend of ours named Jan Stone Soup. And we were both there doing readings one afternoon. And I think I just went to Mary's table and introduced myself to her. And after we talked for a bit, we realized we were actually neighbors, like a 5-minute walk from each other. So we turned into good friends. We've been besties since that day, I believe.
Yeah, it was quite funny looking at the map going, wait a minute, you live on this street and I live on this street and what? And so I would say that's one of those spirit moments, spirit-led moments when you're looking for your people, and oddly enough, they're closer than you think. So we're definitely going to talk about that today. So let's tell the listeners a little bit about you. So tell us how you found out that you were an empath and what that looked like.
I think it probably started when I was a kid. I could, feel the tension, the mood in the room. I could feel it shift. Like when my dad came home, if he was in a bad mood, I knew immediately. I had, imaginary friends when I was very small. And we lived in a very old house that was built after the war for the men and women who were in the war to live in. And I had these 2 imaginary friends that I played with every day, and they were in these old little clothing. And now I look back, it's probably 1800s type clothing. And I know now that they were not imaginary, that they were actually spirits.
Interesting.
And when we moved, they didn't move with me. They were gone. So that's one example. I know that, and this is more than just me being an empath, but, I could see people's auras when they would come in the room. And I could definitely, like I said, energies were a big thing for me. If somebody came in the room that I was uncomfortable with, I knew it, even if I didn't understand why as a 4 or 5-year-old.
Yeah.
And then it just progressed.
What would you say then, when we talk about being an empath, what would you say is the definition of an empath for you specifically?
For me, it is picking up on vibration in a room, a feeling of a space, possibly mood or a something that someone's going through. If I walk into the grocery store and the checkout lady, I immediately know if she's having a bad day, if she's got a headache, if she's got an upset stomach, or if she's about on the verge of tears. And it's not because I can look at her and see it. It's what they say. It's something you just know, and you don't know how you know it, but you do know it. I had an experience I was probably in my 20s. Yes. My youngest child was sleeping in a bunk bed. And the bunk beds were very strongly made by Amish people. And the top bunk, it was big, huge slats of wood on the top. And she was sleeping on the bottom. And I woke up from a dead sleep and knew to go get Molly out of her bed. She was 3, I think. And I brought her into my room. And when I woke up the next morning, one of those big, huge pieces of wood had split and fallen directly on her pillow.
Wow.
So to me, that's, an intuition, whatever that is, you listen, and that's just an example why. So, but to answer your question, I feel like being an empath it's kind of all feeling, all knowing, not all, but you pick up on things other people wouldn't necessarily. If we walk into a room, I might say, oh, I don't want to, I don't like the way it feels in here. I think something might happen in here. Let's go. Whereas my husband would be like, are you crazy? What, we came here to eat. What are you talking about? It's just that kind of thing. Or I could say, that guy over there is having a rough day. What are you talking about? That kind of thing.
You're highly sensitive.
Yeah.
To emotion.
To emotion, physical.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Okay. How interesting. Well, I know a lot of empaths do have this ability, and we often find that people feel like it's a curse rather than a gift. But I want you to illuminate for us, because I know that you have found ways to make this into a gift that has been able to give you opportunity to help people heal through all the different work that you do. So can you tell us about how you've used this as a superpower?
Well, example, when I lived in Florida, I worked at a cancer center, and this is when I was cursing being an empath. Initially, when I first started working there, I really had a hard time because there were so many different emotions all the time. People getting really bad news, people getting really good news, people in the worst pain of their life, And so I'm, every 5 minutes, something new is coming in, and I'm having to decide, how do I regulate this so that I can function and take care of my patient the way they need to be taken care of, and not have like a massive headache or not feel like I'm having a nervous breakdown. Because there were times where I would have a panic attack, feel like my heart was racing and I couldn't breathe, but it wasn't mine. It was that poor patient that had just gotten some horrible news, Gotcha. So I had to learn, and I learned a lot by asking friends, and I learned by trial and error how to make it work, because I loved that job. So I really started trying to ground and protect. I started carrying tourmaline, black tourmaline crystals in my pockets. I would envision myself grounding down into Mother Earth and really, being there and being present. And if it got really overwhelming, and it did a lot of days, I would go to the bathroom and just put my wrists under cold water and just imagine the stress, the anxiety, everything that was filtering into me was now filtering down the drain. And it really, technique. I still use that one. That is one of my go-tos. I also use a lot of aromatherapy. I use it in my home, but I would carry like little tiny roller vials of it, like peppermint or some that smelled like grounding, or the earth or pine trees, things like that worked really well for me, and it would kind of bring me back to where I needed to be. But I think feeling those things from those patients, and maybe understanding more of how horrible some of this was, and how affected they were by it, it gave me a better way to relate to them. We all have bad days. Right. As even as a healthcare worker, I could be on the phone fighting with one of my kids or my husband, or, maybe I have a headache, but it puts it into perspective when you can feel the difference and know the difference. It makes you kind of back up a little bit and say, okay, you really are going through something,
right.
Not me. So
it helps you be present,
it does. It helps you be present. And once you can get through the fogginess of everything bombarding you, and learn how to focus on what you need and not everything else, I think it's a big tool. You know, it helps you relate more to people. People, I mean, I can be walking down the street and end up having a 15-minute conversation with somebody I've never met. People find empaths very approachable and easy to talk to. I had a checkout lady at Target one time. She was checking me out and we were just talking. And I mean, there's people in line behind us and I'm being, kind, and I'm talking to her, and the next thing I know, she's just sobbing. I can't believe
Oh,
I
wow.
just told you all of that. I've never told, well, you just told everybody in line, but you told me. But that's kind of the stuff that happens is that we attract people who feel like they want to talk to you and that they can talk to you, and and that's great. But also, you have to be able to put your barriers up for that too.
Mm-hmm.
You can attract a lot with the light, but you don't want all of it.
Yeah,
So
that's overwhelming.
yes, it can be very overwhelming to take on everybody's problems. You can't be Superman. You can't fix everybody.
That is true. Well, let's pivot on that a little bit because I think and dig into more of the idea about narcissists being attracted to empaths or empaths being attracted to narcissists. And I think that there's something to be said for both ends of that coin. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that as an empath, I was married to a narcissist for lots of years. And I feel like for me, I I was a fixer. I thought, oh, he's been through so much, so much. I can help him. I can fix him. Um, and as an empath, we're so feeling and caring about everybody else. Sometimes we forget that we have to take care of ourselves too. Put everybody else ahead of you, of yourself. And a narcissist will pick up on an empath very quickly because we are so feeling and emotional and open and um, but also until you learn how to handle a situation, I think we can be naive as well.
Yes. Been
Especially
there.
when we were younger,
Mm-hmm.
not understanding that this isn't okay. I'm open for you to tell me this and for you to tell me that, but not for you to talk to me like this and talk to me like that. And I think that a narcissist is pulled to someone who they think is going to take care of them.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
I-
That's
and
true.
I think an empath is pulled to a narcissist because of those strong emotions, maybe.
Yeah, I could see that. I
Mm-hmm.
can totally see that. How do you handle self care? Because you're going to run into overwhelming feelings wherever you go, right?
Yes, absolutely. I carry crystals often, usually like a black tourmaline, something that keeps you really grounded. Water is huge for me. Like I
Mm.
mentioned, running my water over my wrist, but just taking a shower, floating in the pool, even better if you can get your feet in, an ocean or Gulf or a river or a creek. That is almost immediate for me.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
I can feel the bad, not necessarily even bad energy, but the heaviness of everybody's energy just kind of goes away. So self
That
care for me,
accumulation.
yeah, absolutely. And,
Mm-hmm.
and I think, Mary, you were probably one of the people who told me this too, is that you can't help everybody and you're not responsible for everybody. You have to, if you don't take care of yourself first, who's going to take care of you? And the more you pour out, pour out, pour out, pour out, then you're empty, and you've
Mm-hmm.
taken care of everybody else. So as I've gotten older and wiser and had wise friends help me along the way, I know that it's okay sometimes to not answer that phone. It's okay sometimes to not um, deal with a situation that may go sideways. If, I just don't have to do it uh,
Right.
for my own peace of mind. And if I do feel myself getting a little bit overwhelmed, I do a lot of cleansing and clearing in my house.
Oh,
I use
what do you do?
crystal. I do. I use crystals in my house a lot. I use Palo Santo. And I do a lot of aromatherapy. I use peppermint is like my number one go-to. And that all makes me, it just kind of calms and soothes me and makes my space feel light like it should.
Right. We've talked about this before, and I love that you are a crystal witch in my mind, and you do this wonderful gridding of your
Mm-hmm.
home. And I would love for you to tell the listeners about this because I think it's a very important tool to take advantage of.
Well, I have been drawn to rocks and, stones. And since I was a kid, I was always outside using acorns and leaves to make patterns and shapes
Mm,
and draw in the dirt and, like a grid, really.
yeah.
And the more I've learned about crystals and purchased, I mean, I probably have 7 of them here next to me right now.
Right.
I realized that you can use them, to help ground yourself, as I mentioned, for self love, for protection, all types of things. But you can also grid spaces, like my house, for instance. I have pieces of selenite and tourmaline all over my house. I have selenite over every door and window to the outside. I have dark tourmaline in all the corners, and anything else that I just felt necessary for that room, you might find
Mm-hmm.
it above the doorway. Um, and then I can envision gridding them, almost like connecting them together, if you will. Kind of like if you think about those old security systems they used to have in houses, and you could see the lasers crisscrossing across the
Yeah,
room.
I can see that
Um,
in my mind.
yes. So if I sit in the kind of where I decide is the middle of my house, I envision all of these crystals interacting with each other and
Mm,
forming like a physical grid around my house for protection,
I love
keeping
that.
out anything negative, not allowing anything that I wouldn't want in my house to come into my house. And it's taken some years to figure it all out, and now I can kind of just do it in a few minutes. Like, just think about it. Like, okay, cool. It's still up. It's still active. It's done.
Right.
Um, it's all energy. Everything works through energy, and that's how this works as well.
Or are there other things that you do in your space to kind of keep it healthy for you? And
I
when do you
do.
notice that it needs some updating?
Um, well, if somebody's been sick in the house, I will do a
Mm,
good cleanse after that. If there's been an argument in the house, or just if I'm just feeling off, like I shouldn't be feeling upset, I shouldn't be feeling down, but I do. I think, you know what, I better recheck. Um, I also use a my personal energy to surround my home, protect my home. I will go into a meditation. I will ground and connect, open my chakras, and I will push my own energy out around myself, protect, if my husband's in the room, surround him with it as well. It's almost like pushing your aura out.
yeah.
And I'll do one room and then the next and then the next until I imagine it being a huge bubble. And I work a lot with fire, so I imagine it being a big fire bubble ball around my entire house. And
Yes.
I ask my guides if it's sealed, and if they say it's sealed, then it is, and it's done. And I feel comfortable that my house has my energy, my husband's energy, my cats, and nothing else. Nothing else that doesn't belong in here,
Right.
because when you do readings and things like that, like Mary and I do, sometimes stuff slips in, you know, as careful as you are, sometimes some negativity can peek in, that's not a healthy way to live, for sure.
But as a reminder, it doesn't mean that that's there forever. It means that you
Right.
just need to sweep it out and set the
Mhm.
boundary again. It
Absolutely.
is, you're not stuck with that. Um,
No, there's
Not
so
at
many
all.
ways to clear negative energy. I have a singing bowl I use, like I said, Palo Santo. I use lots of oils and things. I
Yes.
love. So there's so many ways to clear your space and just make it feel light and fresh and yours.
Yes, that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. Now, since we're talking about energy and spaces,
Mm-hmm.
you being a nurse and you have worked with many different types of patients in different places, how do you handle areas that you're going into that you can't just Palo Santo or Sage or Crystal Grid?
Well, that's a good question because right now I work private duty care. So I'm in people's homes
Mm.
for hours a day. And, there's a lot of different emotions and energies coming into these houses. And it's not my house. I can't control it. I can't control what's coming in or out. So I have to control me.
Mm-hmm.
I carry crystals in my pockets. Um, And like I mentioned, when I worked at the past clinic, I also have little roller bottles of peppermint, or some of these oils are actually called grounding.
Oh,
And so
interesting.
sometimes I just need to smell it a little bit, like, oh my gosh, what's
Just
going
to
on here?
reset you.
Just to reset, or hold on to my crystals, or go into the bathroom and rinse my hands, rinse my arms. I also do try to use my energy a lot of times to calm the space. If my patient's upset, if they're hurting, or just having something going on, and like they say, like with children, if mom's stressed, the baby can feel it. So
Yes.
you kind of I'll just take a couple deep breaths and make myself as calm as I can, and it really will affect the room. And anybody can do that.
That
Anybody
is
can do
true.
that. Just, the more worked up you are, the more worked up everybody around you is going to be, even if nobody's talking, you know,
Yes. It's
just
all
kind of,
inside,
it
stewing
is.
around.
Right. Exactly. So I just try to soothe, and
Okay.
that works emotionally, and it works for pain too.
Good
Hmm.
tips.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of people out there dealing with other people's emotions in their space, or even going into
Mhm.
family members' houses and
Right.
handling some negativity there or whatever it may be. So these are really good tips. And when you mentioned the crystals, what crystal would you recommend? I mean, for an empath?
Oh gosh.
Let's start
I
with just one or two, just
okay.
some easy stuff.
I always, now this is bigger. I don't carry this in my pocket, but any type of dark crystal, like the tourmaline, the
Onyx,
onyx. What else? There's another one. Um,
um, shungite, maybe. I don't know.
yes, Shanghai.
That's a little harder to find, I think, than your
Yeah, but
tourmaline.
you can find black tourmaline anywhere. It's a
Yeah.
very good grounding stone. And
Hmm.
also, I like to use, oh gosh, the purple one.
Amethyst.
Amethyst. I use a lot of amethyst, and of course, clear crystal quartz you can use for anything.
That's true. That's true.
Hmm.
Well, that's good. No, I think that's going to help. It'll help people. At
Good.
least start somewhere.
Yeah.
What advice would you give a new baby empath?
New baby
Someone
empath.
that's just realized they are one, and what do they do now?
Well, don't panic. It's going to be okay. You've been one your whole life. You just are now
Surprise!
realizing. So, the best thing that happened to me was finding my people, finding my tribe, Mary included, definitely, and a good handful of other people who do what we do and understand. And it's not crazy, and it's not silly, and it's not weird. It's just the way we are.
Hmm.
But before I met my tribe, I went online and I found Facebook groups of psychics and mediums and empaths, and it was like a new world. I was like, oh my gosh, there are
What a
people out
relief,
there
right?
like me. Yeah, I'm not crazy. Everybody, and I didn't even really talk about it much before then. So I did. Oh my gosh, I did so much research, and I read so many books, and I did so many Google searches about what is this? What is this? What makes this happen? And I was like, wow, this really makes sense. And it made me feel better, just having some facts and knowing that you're not alone, and you're not, and trust yourself.
Yeah.
If you feel it's happening. I mean, don't cut yourself short, and don't let other people do that either. A lot of times I hear this, and it happened to me, but your spouse will be like, what? You weren't like this when I married you. You didn't act like this. Why all of a sudden do you think that you can do all of these things? Well, if you're in a situation where you're not comfortable being yourself, having these abilities, or you're in like a fight or flight situation for a long time, that stuff gets shut down. And when you finally are at a place in your life where you can focus more on you, I think a lot of it comes back. I think a lot of us have this as children, lose it in our early adult years, maybe baby raising years, or, when you're trying to fit in, you don't want anybody to think you're weird. And then as we become more ourselves, we're more willing to say, yeah, this is who I am, and, like it or leave it.
Well, I remember, there was a point in time where I too had my run-in with narcissistic person, several, but one in particular that was more in a relationship. And I remember at one point when I realized who I was and I wasn't going to let this person stop me from being myself anymore. He even said to me, "This isn't you," or "I don't know, who is this talking?" And I said, "You don't know me, do you?" And then I realized he didn't, because I never let that show through, right?
You didn't show him.
Right, because it was vulnerability, it was, and that tells you a lot about that big fat red flag, that was in front of me a few times over, right? But
Me
learn from it. And that's the key here, is you can be psychic, you can be empathic, you can be a medium, you can be all of these things, right? And yet still have this draw to heal somebody else that you think has potential, or whatever it is, right?
Absolutely.
And then ignore the flags entirely.
Right. And you have to do that, because we are so drawn to help everybody. The other day, my husband and I were coming home from the grocery store, and there was a gentleman down the street, and he was just laying in the concrete, and he was okay, but
Wow.
I stressed about him all day long. And in my husband's work, he works with those people who are in bad situations a lot. And, he kind of had to bring me down, like, okay, this is his normal, there's nothing you can do. What are you going to do? You're going to walk down there. This guy's a stranger,
Yeah. Are you going to take him into the house and give him soup?
How are you going to help somebody who's lived this lifestyle for probably 30 years? What are you going to do?
Right.
And that was kind of you're right. You're right. That isn't my place. That, am I going to go heal him? No. Still didn't mean I didn't stress about it all day.
Right. And you want to see everybody do better and be stronger. And I think that comes into play with delivering messages too, because you also, get psychic messages that come in. And
I do. Yes.
When do you feel like that's appropriate to deliver?
I think you have to really think long and hard on, are you telling, if you have information for someone or something you really feel like they should know, are you telling them to make yourself feel better, or are you telling them to make them feel better? Is this going to be in their best interest, or is it just like, oh, I know something. Somebody told me something. I know it, so I better tell you, because then
so I can get confirmation.
Right. So I can get confirmation. So that I know what I'm doing, kind of thing. No, you have to bring it back down and decide. And I have been in that situation more than once. Yes. At one point, I had a very good friend. I still have her as a very good friend. She'd had somebody very close to her pass away, and I had never met this person who passed away, but within 3 days, he was with me all the time, wanting me
Wow.
to give a message, wanting me to give a message. And, it was very hard for me to decide if it was appropriate because she was grieving in trauma.
Yes,
And
that is hard.
it took me some, I ended up telling her only because he was so emphatic about it. And she was very grateful. And then, for a long time, I was able to relay messages back and forth.
Right.
So it ended up being a good thing, but it also could have turned out very poorly. She could have been very
Yes.
upset that I was telling her these things or that he had come to me or any of, all of the
Yeah.
above. So,
Well, I've been to, as we both have a medium ability,
mhm.
and one of the things that I've experienced with that is that when I've had people come to me and that it's maybe friends, family members, or whatever, I know that they just passed, and I will say to the spirit, you have to wait. You can come to them in a dream. If you have a message that you
Good
want to
idea.
give them, you've got to find the dream state. I actually refer them to my grandpa to talk to him about how he came into dream state,
Okay.
connect them to someone else in the spirit realm that knows how to do that to be able to help them project that information across the airwaves, and
I love
that's been
that. See,
helpful.
that's a great idea. Um, and no, there was a time that when I was working at the cancer clinic, patients were passing. That's what happens. But they were
Yes.
coming to me after they passed, and like they didn't know that they'd passed, and I was helping them, pass on. But
Mm-hmm.
then it just got to be so much. It
Oh,
never turned
yes.
off. I could not figure out how. I didn't know how to turn it off, and I was getting mad. I was like, that stop. I can't do this. I'm at work, or stop. I'm trying to talk to my kid, or just, at one point I was like, you can talk to me between 7 and 8 p.m. period. That's it. And I think I finally told Mary, I said, help me. And she kind of peeked in. I was like, oh my gosh, girl, there are so many people here waiting for you. And I was like, I can't, la, 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 la. And Mary kind of stepped in and helped me with that. So you have to set boundaries and you have to decide what is right for you.
Yes.
Just because you can do it doesn't mean you have to.
That is such an important lesson right there. If any of you take away anything from this, just because you can doesn't mean you have to.
Right.
You may want to learn more about it. You may want to do it in the future.
Mm-hmm.
You may or may not, but you don't have to. So,
Right. Exactly.
oh,
And
yes.
I've started sending everybody to Mary. She sends them to their grandfather possibly, but I send them to her.
That's funny. Most of the time they'll get where they need to go. So it's
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
totally fine.
Hmm. That's funny.
Well, so now I do want to ask you this question because I think it kind of goes into everyday life situations. As far as becoming a nurse, what did you do to decide that path? Why would you decide that path, knowing that you were super sensitive?
Well, I think when I decided this, I probably didn't have the words. I didn't know that I mean, I knew what I could do. I knew that I sensed things and felt things, but when I was in nursing school, I didn't, even as a young adult, I still don't think I knew that not everybody could do that.
Ah,
So
gotcha.
I went in, you know, just wanting to help people. My grandfather
Yes.
was very ill. He was in a long term care facility. I did not like the way he was treated there. There were
Mm,
some situations that happened, and I thought, well, by God, when I'm a nurse, I'm going to work long term care. When I'm there, I will know at least on my watch that these people are safe and being taken care of properly.
yeah.
I wasn't able to. I actually probably the first half of my career I worked long term care, but that's not easy on the back, so it didn't last my whole career. I think that if a lot of time I have seen like polls and things, people who are empaths, what are their jobs, and a lot of them are social
Uh-huh.
workers, they're nurses, they're teachers, they work with
Mm-hmm.
people, they're counselors, therapists, things like that.
Yes.
doctors,
Caregivers. Yeah.
caregivers. Yeah. And because it's just in our nature.
Yeah, that would make
This is
sense.
how we were born.
Yep. And now we're learning to finally getting together and learning to navigate this whole realm.
I know. And isn't it crazy? At 55 years old, I really feel like I've only been connected to other people who are open to this probably within the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Well, I think we're on a fast track to connecting each other. I think that
Yeah.
we're opening that higher and higher because a lot of the children coming in are more empathic and
Oh,
more
100%.
aware. Yeah. So we're
100%.
teaching the next generation on how
Mhm.
to handle some of what we've learned. We're passing the torch.
Right. I just had lunch with a friend who is, age of my oldest daughter, and she was telling me how she's been manifesting things, because we
How
had big
fun.
conversations about that. So, I felt proud of her. Like, look at what she did. Look at how I helped, but it is, I think you're absolutely right, is that the younger generation isn't so, they're not being taught that this isn't normal. We're raising our children to be open minded. And, a lot of people who are empaths or, light workers, psychics, their children are too,
Yes. Yes, they
so
are.
as long as you keep that path open and that communication open, don't turn that off for the kids, because then, they don't necessarily lose it, but it takes a long time sometimes for it to come back, and it's confusing and it can be scary.
Yes. It can be. And if they have the support of someone who's been through it, and that's part of why I'm doing the podcasts in general, is to kind of
Mhm.
help people get through this and find connection this way. So I really appreciate you taking the time to
Oh,
share your journey today and being a path maker
thank
as
you.
you are.
I love
And
what you're doing. I wish there was more of this when I was trying to figure it out myself.
me too. I mean, years back, like I wish there was more of this. I'm grateful for who I had, but it would have been pretty helpful for them. You help other people on their journeys as a psychic as well,
Mhm.
tuning into them with your abilities. Now, tell me a little
Right.
bit about that work that you do.
Well, I used to do a lot more of it than I do now, but I can kind of connect energies, is the way I say it. And if someone would come and want to talk with me and have some questions about maybe what's going on in their future, what's happening with my life right now, usually when somebody wants to talk to a psychic, it's because they're having some kind of crisis, usually,
Yeah,
typically. Um, Maybe somebody's passed away, they've had a breakup, things like that. Well, you know, it's almost like just a conversation. Like I'm talking to a friend, but it's more like they're like, "How did you know that?" Um, and by knowing, you know, things that they're not telling me necessarily, I'm able to guide them down their
get to the
path.
root cause.
Get to, yeah, exactly. Crying over the boyfriend that broke up with them. Well, honey, how many times did he cheat on you? Oh,
Right.
well, like four. Okay, well, maybe. I don't know. That kind of
hmm
stuff. But, I
It's
had a
tough love
lady,
in a way.
it kind of is. I had a lady one time say, I just feel like we're just having a conversation. And she was annoyed about it. And I was like, well, okay,
Hmm.
this is how I do it. I don't have a big crystal ball and I don't wear a hat and I don't do all of that stuff.
No, and I
But
don't have, a crazy thing going on and making it
yeah,
spooky or anything. I'm just me and you. We're doing this.
right. But I can read your energy, and I have visions in my mind, and I can hear things and I can see things. And you know a lot of times we are able to help people when that happens, when
Absolutely.
we can do that. And I really would like to think that 99% of the people that have come to me for a reading feel like they have gotten feel better after the conversation, that they've
Yes.
gotten some answers, or maybe just something that's able to soothe them or calm them from what's been going on in their rocky world.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's
Mhm.
nice to be able to be real with someone,
Mhm.
and there is a relief to releasing some of those skeletons in the closet, and
Mhm.
knowing that you didn't even have to say it is
Right.
is amazing too. So that's
Yeah,
what
exactly.
you keep doing your good work, girl, because I know that the world needs people to help other people, and you're doing it in many ways, with
Thank you.
with your nursing, with your psychic work, with your candle magic, with your stones, and sharing and
Right.
caring about others. So
Well,
um,
thank you.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. You keep going. Now, how do people get a hold of you if they want to have a reading with you?
I don't have an official page, but I
Hmm.
do have Facebook Messenger, and it's just Melissa McCabe box with
Okay.
two X's. And if somebody wants to have a reading, or questions or whatever, I would be happy to just let you message me on Facebook Messenger.
Okay.
Just make
Well,
sure
I'll
you
post
say,
that.
just make sure you let me know you want to talk about it, and not just like, hey, be
Okay.
real.
Well, I'll make sure to put that in the show notes so that people can kind of refer to the
Thank you.
spelling of how to connect
Okay.
with you if they feel
Thanks.
drawn.
I appreciate
Thank
that.
you for being here today.
Yes, ma'am. It was fun. I really enjoyed it.
Me too. All right, listeners, until next time, take care.